Welcome to the Scythian Dragon Lords Education Channel. This one's about old Europe and the Danube civilization. The Danube civilization is part of the Carpathian Basin. It's actually been around for a long, long time. Other names are Old Europe, Danube civilization, aka Vinca culture, Susitini culture, Koros, Kurdish, Turdosh culture. You have all different cultures that were part of this civilization. Old Europe consisted of many different Y and mtDNA haplogroups. Certain time came and we had an migration of G, R, N, all different types of haplogroups that came in, J, into the Carpathian Basin. These people from the different cultures of the Yamnaya, which were also part of the Baden culture and part of the old Europe civilization, they migrated more towards into the old Europe. And that's when you had farmers, bringing in their new livestock and their new different types of wheats and a little bit more advanced agriculture. But there was already agriculture in old Europe. They actually moved old European Vinca culture, which was the trade network of the world, down to Mesopotamia around 4,000, 3,900 BC. And part of that was transferring the culture and other stuff into the Fertile Crescent and, vice versa. It was basically one big Danube, Carpathian Basin down to Sumeria, agricultural, knowledge that these people brought, shared, and, took out from the Carpathian Basin and also brought from East and other different areas. Some of the oldest cultures in Europe, like the Koros culture, Starcevo culture, also the Alfold linear pottery culture. These are all different cultures and civilizations that were already advanced. They had their own already, they were already making stuff that everybody wanted, and they were already a big civilization. They were just spread out. Everybody had their own land. They were lords of their times, and the different cultures from here went out to the east and spread writing, which went through down to like the Mitanni Empire. And from there, different parts of Mesopotamia, the Dravidians from India that were originally from the Ma Confederation from Africa. Part of their haplogroup is T. I traced them back to different tribes over there in Africa, and they are or were part of the culture in Mesopotamia that was the advanced culture that took the writing. That was part of like the Royal Aryan type people at the time. They had the Huns, but they also had the Scythians. Aryans just means royal tribes. They were just the advanced royals that moved the agriculture and stuff over. But the Dravidians, they moved out to the Kushite area, which was out there by Afghanistan and upper India, and then they ended up in lower India. That's where the Dravidian language is the largest population today in India. But they were the ones that brought the writing from, Mesopotamia over to advance the Silk Road and the trade networks and for trading purposes is the biggest one actually. But writing is education, so that helps everybody. The Baden culture of old Europe, including the East Bell-Beaker and the Bell-Beaker East group civilizations of old Europe, were all part and almost running at the same time as the Yamnaya folks, um, up and down that Danube River, all the way over, and looks like all the way to East Europe. The Susitini Trypillian culture of old Europe was another pretty advanced civilization. They did lack writing, but they communicated through writing on like tablets and wood and different types of materials. They already had houses. They had advanced pottery with all kinds of different forms and shapes, and they practiced the goddess culture, which was the goddess culture of Europe. You can see the women that were decepted during that time, which was more of a pagan religion. They didn't have the Christianity yet and stuff like that. What I mean by pagan is they were worshiping like nature and different types of goddesses, and mostly women, because at that time, the women had the babies, and at that time it was a little bit different. They didn't have the introduction yet of the male, gods that they worship today. Another thing that they really, really were probably scared of were different types of diseases and that they knew of, because the whole old Europe areas, they all basically what they did is they burned their whole villages down, moved to the new village as soon as they found out something was gone. If there was a disease, a plague, anything that happened to the, any kind of crazy stories or anything, they practiced what was called the burned house horizon. And they just burned everything down, moved to the next villages. And that's why we don't have a lot of trace of them, because at that time they didn't really build the houses out of, blocks and cement and geopolymer and all that kind of stuff. What they did was they built everything out of wood. So everything was, wood-based houses. The agriculture, they already did all the same stuff. They had all kinds of different products. If they can make advanced pottery, as you see that in these different types of pictures, then they can definitely do advanced agricultural stuff. Copper was another thing that was not big in the Susitini Trypillian areas. It was more towards central old Europe, and then down earlier it was towards old, we'll call it Asia Minor. The agricultural migrations from the Mediterranean group that they show, EV13, G2, I2A haplogroups. I2A is a pure European haplogroup. I2A2, I2I goes back to the Vikings, the Scythians. EV13 originally is a Kosovo. That's where it actually developed and mutated from EM. I believe it was 35 or something that came from the Levant area, that came down from Egypt area, which was the haplogroup E. But it did have a mutation, in the Carpathian Basin, and that one is actually a pure, what we call African European haplogroup. A lot of royals. G2A was the farmers that came from the Caucasian area, the Caucasian mountain to be specific, and they split from there, and they were part of the Koros agricultural group that also, let's say they were by the Tiza and the Don and all these different Danube River. They had these areas, and they practiced agriculture already. So the only thing that they didn't have is they didn't have any kind of advanced weaponry or anything like that. A lot of this was all based on agriculture. And as you could see, as they moved up from the Asian Minor area up into lower Balkans, up to the Hungarian area, which we call Magyarország, who have been there for basically over 40,000 years. This is where the Magyars originally are from. This is also where our language, the Magyar language, was developed. Writing was also developed where you see Koros culture. That is where they moved the writing down to Mesopotamia around 3000 to 2900 BC. That was called the Yamdet Nazir site. They called it the Pro-Literate period of Mesopotamia because that's when writing got moved down from the Carpathian Basin, which was the origin of the Magyar Szekli Rovás írás, which was called the runes writing. And then all the runes were based off of those runes. And they moved that to the east. They moved it to Western Europe. They moved it all to different places for trade purposes. Because old Europe was the trade network at the time. And then they moved it down, like I said, around 4,000, 3,900 BC down to Mesopotamia. The Magyar Szekli Rovás írás, the runes, are very similar to the Vinca, the Etruscan, Aramic, different signs and symbols that they used are very, very similar. This was for trade purposes, and basically what they did is they created new scripts as they evolved. So when writing, started happening and Latin writing came into effect, that overtook, and the what we call like the pagan Scythian writing system. It was banned by the church. It was banned by different sects, and so Latin took over, and then today we got English took over, and then that's the different types of things that they did with the writing system. One other old civilization that I wanted to mention was the Varna civilization. They had some of the oldest gold in the world. And they were around, 4,400 BC area, down around the Bulgaria area. They were also part of the old European civilizations that were all connected. These were just different, little villages and areas that were already developed. They didn't have the big cities and, the new agriculture that we have today. But definitely wanted to mention them. They are very unique, and it looked like they were also landlords of their time, and they had big connection to the Lydia people down in Africa. They had a huge connection to them. The gold moved usually from the Varna civilization down to Mesopotamia, Egypt area. And usually they came from areas like Romania and the gold mines in Hungary. Those were the different types of areas that were protected, because these resources at the time weren't really what we, see them as today. Some understood, but many, didn't see gold as just the highest status. Gold was very unique, and usually in the royal and the higher tribal leaders that used these different types of symbols and jewelry and on the horses and stuff. But that's a whole nother story, but we will definitely get to it. Thank you for viewing.